Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. And thank you for those who are early today. And if you're already here, please check in using our link in the description box below or in the chat. And before we begin, here's a short video about new HR super app. Enjoy.
Does your company have these problems? Meet Alt HR, the super app for companies. Alt HR is not your typical HR solution. To start, we designed and tested this with more than 1,500 DG employees. But it doesn't matter what your company size is. You can still use Alt HR. If you have existing HR policies, you can easily plug them into Alt HR. If not, let us help your company adopt the latest HR practices that we've tested with DG's HR team. Say goodbye to stacks of papers and complex spreadsheets. Say goodbye to manual works and hours spent on administrative tasks. With Alt HR, you can easily carry out HR processes with our clean and simple user interface. Easy for your employees, painless for your HR. Perform HR operations such as leave management, expense claims to new hire onboarding. Keep your employees happy and manage their well-being with case management, checklists, and highlights. If that's not enough, we have more. Be it to adapt to the new normal or to enable your teams to be more agile, you can check out our attendance and time tracking module. With Alt HR, clock in and clock out by just using a smartphone to have an even simpler digital management of all attendance data. Punch cards no longer needed. In services, your employees can purchase vouchers, pay their utility bills, mobile reloads, and other essential services from inside Alt HR itself. Have you heard of an HR app that does this? Your employees deserve the best. Let us help you with that.
Hi, good morning once again. My name is Natalie, and I'm part of the customer success team at DGX. And I will be your host for today's webinar. A quick introduction to DGX before we begin. So DGX is a DG's venture builder arm, and our focus is to help Malaysian companies of all sizes solve problems by digitalizing their operations through our products or HR, Omni Hotline, and Fleet. And yeah, before we start, for the old timers, you know what to do. Do fill out the form embedded in this QR code or visit the link provided so that we can actually send you materials after this. And if you're new here, yeah, please do check in so that we can send you some very useful materials, after this webinar. And today's webinar is organized in conjunction with NDEX 100 Go Digital program. And similar to our other webinars, today's webinar is also a part of DG's Business Continuity Digitalization Initiative. So hi, everyone, since March, we've gone through 6 phases of movement control order in Malaysia. And I have a question for everyone here. By now, do you think that you're really prepared for the pandemic? Financially, mentally, and your overall well-being. I'm sure some of you are here today because you want to find out more how you can be more prepared, or maybe you're still not sure whether you are all ready, for whatever's coming. And we are very glad that we have a very special guest, Rohit Nambiar, the CEO of AXA Affin Life Insurance, to join us today. Hi, Rohit.
Hello, hi Nat, how are you?
Great. How about you?
Very good. All set to talk to people.
Yes. I'm sure everyone is also looking forward to this. And just for everyone's information, Rohit began his career at AXA as an analyst and has more than 15 years of experience working across various departments and roles within a few countries: India, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Vietnam. I was just talking to him, that wow, he's very open to traveling around and open to new job opportunities. So we are very glad that that you can be here with us today, especially I think for the young people and also the SMEs, our audience today, to talk about how we can actually protect ourselves and also plan for our future during this pandemic. And hopefully we can also get your insights into some of the key lessons that SMEs or even insurance companies had learned from this crisis. And I think what more important is like moving forward, what can we do? What are the action plans here, right? So yeah, maybe I can just ask you with a launching question first. Do you think yourself is prepared for this? Do you think the companies now are prepared for whatever is happening now?
Well, it's a mixed bag, right? I don't think any one company can say we were totally prepared for this, but at the same time, established companies were well geared to handle a crisis. I remember there were some funny stories in Malaysia of companies actually asking employees to take desktops to their house in big boxes, and all of these funny stories. But jokes apart, for us, for example, the company I'm currently linked with,
Yes.
we came to know about the lockdown on a Friday evening. Saturday morning we had a call, and on Monday we were all working, and we were working from home. The reasons were we had a very strong crisis management and risk management setup, which was preparing for an event. Did it prepare for an event so long? No. I don't think any of us expected this in our wildest imagination.
Yeah,
it is a 1-in-100-year event. Since the Spanish flu, we've never seen this kind of an event. So I think, but at the same time, I think the strong crisis management meant we can work from home. People were used to working from home. People had laptops. People had soft phones. So we used Omni from DG, for example, as our soft phone. So none of us were suddenly worried, oh, we don't have hard phones with us. Who's going to call us? Which line? We had most of the capability. So it wasn't new. What was challenging was the human aspect of it, which is obviously when people are working from home, you're not seeing people. And when you have video calls, most people switch off their videos. And you don't know if the person is stressed, happy, not happy, etc.
Right.
I'm always worried about those people who I broadly divide them into silent people. They could be silent critiques, they could be silent observers, they could be silent sufferers. I don't know. So one of the things I did do was I insisted on having weekly town halls, something we never did before. The reason is just to communicate to them what is happening, what should they be thinking of. And we also had smaller group interactions in groups of 15 and 20 employees.
Right.
And we also had a chatbot launched called Amber at this point in time. So the chatbot used to, and it's machine learning enabled, the bot used to contact employees to just do a sense check of how they feel. You might ask, why do you need a bot when a person can talk? But we are all different. Human being, there are 3 kinds of people. There are auditory, kinesthetic, and vocal and visual people. So we can't use one approach for all the people. So that's why, we've embraced quite a bit. So it's been a great learning journey, I think. For me, as most people say, I don't think we will get a bigger opportunity than this to make a change in our lives.
Right. I agree with you. I think like even for myself, I think at DGX we also adopt like similar check-ins with employees, and we have stand-ups among teams, and that's very helpful. Not just talking about work, but also ask like how's everyone doing, and being given that platform to also share about our even personal struggles, and that's very helpful, because I think especially this time everyone is stressed out, so that comes to like how I think as employer we can also help our employees to perform better when we care about their life as well, right?
Yeah.
um,
I think this whole pandemic has taught us one very important lesson, which is, as an individual, we can only go so far, but as a team, we can go much further. Why do I say that? As leaders, this was a period when we had the least answers. So the
mhm,
old philosophy of as a leader, you should know everything, which is not at
mhm,
all true. A leader has to be the most vulnerable person in the organization, in my view,
mhm,
because the fact is, I know 1% and I don't know 99% of the things.
mhm,
So my job is to facilitate the others to come together to find solutions for 90% of problems that we face.
mhm,
And I think that vulnerability was really exposed during this time for many a leader. Some who didn't embrace digital, some who didn't know how to manage the financial risk aspects, some who didn't know how to manage the people aspects. So all of us were challenged from that perspective.
mhm.
And it's about what did we do to equip ourselves with new skills to be able to manage the situation.
Right. Now that you mentioned about challenges that as a leader or even like a company is facing, there are just so many things going on. You have like increased risk, whether it's supply chain, whether like the tightened cash flow, or even just making sure that you manage to keep your talents around, and also worrying about any financial constraints. So how would you like advise a leader to tackle all these areas all at the same time? It's so overwhelming.
Less is more. Less is more. It's the fact of life. Of course, my team would say we don't have less. We aren't having less enough. But at the same time, we are prioritizing constantly and removing stuff which we can't do or it doesn't add value.
Hmm.
So the focus really has to be in doing lesser things and doing them really well.
Right.
Um, that's the key. And as leaders, I can tell you, we are across the board, especially in the industry I come from, terrible in prioritization. We
Hmm.
tend to do everything. So I think the biggest learning for us all is how can we be more nimble? How can we be agile in the real sense of the word? People, the new
Hmm.
age millennials, have been telling us for a long time, but we never listened. So suddenly now, projects which took 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, we are able to do that in 3 months, in a much cheaper way, much more efficient way, because everybody understands this is a question of survival now. So
Hmm.
then have no choice. And as I wrote in one of my blog articles about leadership, the beauty about mankind is we are at our best when survival is in question. We discovered
Hmm.
most of the things in life when we are when it's a question of survival. And that's why I do believe that in this phase of life,
Yes.
we will have more productivity benefits than ever has been had. Because I've read article after article from economists which say in the last 70 years, the productivity across the world has increased in very low single digits. The reason
Hmm.
is the cream of the cream, the DGs and the Axels of the world, the productivity goes up. But then the 50% of the workforce, which is in rural agriculture, etc., their productivity is actually reduced over the last several decades. So overall, as a country, productivities have hardly increased in the last 70 years. And I think this time around might be the single biggest improvement or increase we've ever seen.
Right. Um, like if you give that flexibility of work, for because you talk about millennials, and right now, when people talk about millennials, then think about, oh, we want flexibility in our work hours. And then we have a question here from our audience, Sean. I think they also want to know about the expectations. So he asked, even till date, many people do not have the clear understanding of what the right expectations are when working from home. So how do you monitor their status and well-being?
Great question. I think this question I hear interestingly quite often. Actually, the
Right.
engagement rules haven't changed. The problem is we had too many managers who weren't equipped to manage people. We still live in a world where we manage by time and not manage by objectives. If your objectives are sharp, they are smart, which means they're specific, they are actionable, they are time bound, they're measurable, you shouldn't have a problem. And I always review objectives from time to time, and I notice
Mm-hmm.
generally many objectives are very flaky. And I don't like flaky objectives because both sides, it's left to both sides interpretation, emotions, bias, and many other things.
Mm.
So the question from Sean, I would say, Sean, nothing's changed. Whether you're working from home or whether you're working in office, the key discussion you need to have is what is the objective I have? What do I need to achieve? How does it fit into the larger goals of the team and the company? And how am I going to be measured and by when? And these need to be very specific. The second one is please have regular check-ins. It's very important to have regular check-ins. I insist on fortnightly one-to-ones with all my team. And during the one-to-one, what we discuss is what have you done in the last fortnight? What are you going to do in the next fortnight? And what support do you need or challenges you face? Now, some people may do it even more frequently, but I would say there has to be a minimum level that we have to do. The third part of it is your development is in your hands. And I've said this many times. 99% of your development is in your hands. So if your manager or your leader is not having that conversation, you need to make that conversation happen. You can make that conversation happen by asking the other side to have the conversation or forcing the other side to have that conversation. But we owe it to our staff as
Mm-hmm.
leaders, if we employ them, to give them that respect, to tell them why have we employed them. If
Right.
my board doesn't tell me why they have recruited me and just tells me you go and fly on your own, it's unfair on me and them, because I will fly where I want to fly and they may not want me to go there. So I think it's very important to have that conversation to align on what are
Mm.
your expectations.
Right. So the alignment of expectations have to come from both sides, right? It cannot be just like one-sided. So the leader has to like actively communicate, and also I use the word like empathize with the situation, so that they can make better decisions in the employee engagement. So
But I think the best way is if, as employees, we all think that it's not up to the leader, it's up to me to figure this conversation out. Half of the problem
mm,
is because then you know what, it's just going to work because I'm going to do it with my board. My excom will do it with me. Their team will do it with them, and then it's going to be a much easier place to live in because each of us are worried about our own development.
mm,
If you want, I can talk about some examples I've had. In
yeah.
my past, I've always insisted on this. If I had a manager who didn't believe in one-to-ones. I can give you an example. And before that, I had a manager who was extremely structured, who used to meet every fortnight. He had a template I had to send him before I meet him when I was in Hong Kong. And then
Mhm.
I went on to a manager who doesn't believe in one-to-ones at all. So what I used to do was I used to check with his assistant, when is he available? I used to just turn up at his office at that time and insist, this is what I'm doing and this is where I'm going to go. If you don't tell me anything, I'm going to assume I'm going the right direction. So,
Mm.
it's your development is in your hands. So make it happen.
All right. So, if let's say a company is very clear on its objective, right? So then I will just pick question from Idris A, which okay, let's say they are aware of what objective they want to achieve. What are some quick and easy ways that they can take to actually make it easier, for employees to work from home? Are there any tools, more meetings or better separation between work and personal time? I think Idris is looking for more like practical
Yeah,
examples. Yeah.
I can do that. So I think first of all, don't jump into the work from home bandwagon and don't jump away from it. In the last 5 years, we've seen this. Let's forget COVID for a minute. In the last 5 years, we've seen this trend of everybody wanting to jump into work from home, and some
Mm-hmm.
companies taking a strong stand saying they don't believe in it, and some saying we are going to go full on work from home. And actually, before COVID, there was a study which said that there were more people who came out of work from home than who went into it. So there's an interesting trend happening all around. I believe in the concept of moderation in life. I don't think one model works. You need a mix of work from home and meeting people in the office, because you need to build that culture. You need to get people together sometimes. So you need to have a mix of both. For
Mm-hmm.
me, on work from home, there are the first and the most important concept here is technology is over exaggerated in our world and people are underestimated. Suddenly, tools which were never adopted in our company, which had 30% adoption, 70% adoption, had 100% adoption and no complaints in the WhatsApp group anymore. When we launch a new technology, suddenly you have agents complaining, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. I want this to look this way, I want it to look that way. And then after COVID, nobody's complaining. Everything looks really great. So again, it's a mindset issue. So for work from home, I think the first thing you need to do is to equip your staff on what is work from home. Equip your managers on how to manage people who are working from home, because as I said before, you need to manage for objectives and not time. It doesn't come naturally to people. Explain to employees what does it mean, and I can tell you, like everything in life, there will be a period of making mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. The first few weeks I was working from home, I didn't have a line between professional and personal life. I was just working from morning to midnight and I didn't know what is happening to my life. And suddenly after a few weeks, of course now I've recently got injured, but after a few weeks I realized I have to put a certain division to my life. So in the morning, I
Mm-hmm.
used to work out at home at 6:30 in the morning. I used to then do 30 to 45 minutes of listening to some audible or podcast or whatever. Then take a shower and end up at work at 9 o'clock in front of my computer. At least
Mm-hmm.
I knew I've done the part of taking care of my life. So it's very important for each of us to have that. The other thing I would say is you have to put more emphasis on engagement than ever before. For SMEs, it's much easier because your employee base is smaller. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very important for you to have video calls. For example, you could have a stand-up meeting every day. I know an SME, for example, I was speaking to Azran from Naluri the other day, and he told me that his team has two meetings every day, one in the morning and one in the evening. It's a 15-minute stand-up meeting, full stop. That's it. So I
Mm-hmm.
think those really help because you get together, you quickly see each other, you discuss what to expect, what not to expect, and you know how to wind down the day or restart the day, if I may say so. So I would say
Right.
three rules. The first one is you have to build the right culture and lead from the top. Second is you have to set the right objectives, the right measurements, and you have
Mm-hmm.
to follow through on them regularly. And
Mm.
for me, a given is that you have to have the tools to support them. So obviously,
Right.
you need to give them the apps and the technology to work from home. But
Mm.
for me, that's a given. There are so many available today in the market that you can easily get started. So for me, again, that's kind of over exaggerated in our industry.
All right. Oh, thanks for sharing those. I think I would shift the topic for a bit because
So,
I think what we discussed, right, it's more of like the privilege of the companies that that they still have that privilege to at least talk about like work from home. Because we have a audience here asking about because their business not doing that well. So I think
mm,
we also want to cover that part as well today because like we do want to benefit our audience also on how they can protect not just individually but also their business. Yeah. So like I think we have a question here from Justin. He actually said that I'm scared that there will be a second lockdown and this will interrupt my business again. If this happens again, we might need to close down. So what can I prepare now to prevent it or be prepared for it?
So I think for SMEs who are scared of a second lockdown, I always say prepare for the worst, and that's the only way we can handle this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You got, I always said during the lockdown to my agents who kept saying that it will open up, it will open up, that I can
Mm-hmm.
assure you this is not going to open up in the next few weeks. The reason was it was better to give them the bad news than them to wait for the good news to come, which didn't come, and then they again waited, and they didn't get to work.
Right.
We need to get to work as an industry. There are so many opportunities out there. I am not naming the company, but I was yesterday speaking, yes, 2 days back, I was speaking to a telemedicine company who said they've never had a better year in their last few years of existence. I was speaking to another company who are into mental health support. They've again had a record year. I've spoken to another company which is into design experience, customer design experience. And they
Mm-hmm.
actually said that they are actually already flat versus last year and they expect to grow and they're actually hiring people. So
Wow.
the mindset we have
Yeah.
that, hey, it's all gloom and doom. Yes, it is. Some industries are smashed. Travel, airlines, a lot of industries, even banking to some extent because of the moratorium, is absolutely smashed. But the point is, how do you redesign your business? Where
Mm-hmm.
are the opportunities? And for Justin, my biggest advice would be look at where is your opportunity, where is the biggest customer pain point, and how can you deliver a solution digitally with least amount of physical touch so that it's easy to be delivered, from where you sit. I
Yeah.
can tell you there was another IT service provider who I met who said they've never had more requirement for OCR, supply chain IT solutions than ever before, because
Mm-hmm.
suddenly a lot of logistics companies realized that they were too manual and now they need all these solutions. So you are seeing, new models, new opportunities evolve everywhere. The second thing I would tell Justin is financially prepare for the worst. So if you are in industries which are definitely going to be absolutely smashed, you need to now take a view on two things. I always say do business planning, come up with a plan which says, what is my best case estimate and what is my conservative worst case estimate? If you cannot survive the worst case estimate, now is the time to either pivot your business, leave your business, or decide how else am I going to manage this business because I don't think I can survive for the worst case scenario. When travel people come to me and say, I have a travel business, what should I do? I say, guys, you need to look at it from three perspectives. How long will it take for the travel business to come back? Can you
Mm-hmm.
survive that long? Or do you need to pivot to something else? If you cannot survive that long, how are you going to reduce your cost base? To survive that long is another question. So I think there are three ways to bell this cat, and that those are very difficult questions. People seem to not want to listen. It's almost like it happened, so now I'm going to decide. But
Mm.
people generally don't want to make these decisions.
Right. Mm. I think one key takeaway here is that I think like looking the challenges as opportunities instead. So like the mindset that you were saying. So instead of
The
like just
customer is always right, Nat. In the food chain that I always explain, um, the customer, we all, it's simple. You and I have a job because a customer is buying a solution from our company. If
mm-hmm.
they're not there, our sales force is not there. Our sales force is not there, then all the support functions are not there. The support functions are not there, you don't need a CEO. The CEO is not there, you don't need a board. So you pretty much don't have anything if a customer does not need your solution or your product. So it all boils down to being obsessed with customer needs in the market.
Right. So like other than being, because I think for a company to grow, not just like preventing, like preparing, but also to grow a company, definitely risk has to be taken, right? And
Yes.
um, I think like you're talking about the consumer behavior also is shifting. So we need to like kind of innovate even like our product, uh, how we actually innovate our
Sorry, Nat.
product.
Yeah, I think you got cut off. Nat, you got cut off. I couldn't hear your question. Can you repeat it?
Okay,
Sorry.
I was saying that like so for a company not just to prepare themselves for the worst, also they have to see that they are growing their company. So like risk has to be taken, and also seeing that there's a shift in the consumer behavior, right? So right now it's very important for the company to actually innovate their product portfolio, right? I see that like even for AXA, I think this year you have launched also several industries first. So how do you come about like either with your AXA e-medic or the Step It Up class, how do you innovate your product portfolio to suit the current landscape?
It's driven by the customer. So we always do a consumer research, we do focus group discussions, we do consumer forums, figure out where are the gaps in the market, and we assess first where is the gap. The second is we put the right team to solve the solution. We had a team which was full of millennials, because it was a solution for the millennials. If gray cells like me sit and solve problems for millennials, it's not going to happen. So we had a team which was led by millennials who understood it. We launched the product on a test and learn basis, which means not all our products were successful, and we are okay with that because we're learning the market. And we believe in the beauty of speed and agility. So we like to launch things fast, to test the market, to get consumer feedback, and then fine tune it as we go. We, in fact, during the lockdown, launched a very interesting proposition, a bite-sized proposition with DG called DG Abadi on the prepaid, where consumers get protected for death and also their funeral expenses. It's a very, very simple product. But it goes with the package, with the SIM. So again, this product was completely developed by the two teams sitting at the beauty of their own homes. No one met each other physically, and yet the product hit the market.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Um, I think like for SMEs, right? Because when it comes to like, I think digitalization or like just being innovative, um, if let's say they are lack of the team that you mentioned here, whether it's a team full of creative millennials, how can they go about it like with the limited resources or existing resources that they have?
So coming back, let me talk a little bit about how should millennials probably plan for their protection of financial needs, which will link it to SMEs as well. See, first thing is there are only three things that matter to a millennial. Research after research proves three things are the most important things for a millennial today. The first one is their mobile phone. Their lives depend on their mobile phones. So invariably, they want to ensure the mobile phone is covered if it breaks, if it gets lost, blah, blah, blah. The second one is travel. They love traveling. Of course, now a bit difficult with COVID. The third one is health, because they don't want their family to be paying for them if something happens to their health. For me, health is the basic product that anybody should have among millennials or SMEs. The reason being, health is a survival benefit, right? So you need to ensure you have enough coverage for your own health. And then there are other mandatory products. So obviously, you need to cover your car, if you're driving your car. So those are requirements. The second part of it is to be protected if something happens to you, so that your family or the people who are dependent on you have something back. Many times people confuse protection with other kinds of products. I always recommend buying the most simple protection, which means term protection, which means no frills, no investments, no that, no this. It just covers if something happens to the breadwinner or to the person concerned, it covers and gives a certain amount of money to the family. These products are exceptionally cheap. For example, AXA has products which are at 5 and 10 ringgits a month. They're very cheap. The reason why protection and how much protection, I'll come to it. The reason why protection is very important is in Malaysia, one of the issues I see is people sometimes buy 1 million health coverage and buy 50,000 protection. What do I mean by that? If when they are living and something happens to their health, they have a good coverage of 1 million. But if something were to happen to them and they were to pass away, their family would get 50,000 or 25,000, which is no way going to help in the education of their kids or anything for their family. So there is an issue of underprotection, and the reason the underprotection happens is people are obsessed about survival benefits and people are obsessed about fancy products. Don't fall into this trap of fancy products. Basic protection coverage, how do you calculate it? Very simple as a young millennial. Take your salary, remove all the expenses which are what I call dispensable expenses, which are, for example, going to a pub or going for a beauty treatment, etc. Remove the savings, and whatever you're left with, that is the amount of money you should have per month when you retire. So that will give you a sense of how much you have to save. They generally say, again, speak to a financial advisor if you need qualified advice. I'm not a qualified advisor. I work in industry. But they generally say you should have at least a coverage of anywhere between 10 times of your annual salary in savings when you retire. Because then that means you will have a certain, even better, people would say 20 times, but I would say start with 10 before you go to 20, because the minute you say 20, people get, I'm nowhere there, And the problem is because we buy very fancy products, the products tend to be very expensive and your coverage is much lower.
Yeah.
So the first one I say is buy health. The second one I say is buy protection, and ensure you are covered enough by understanding your protection gap. There's enough Google articles about understanding protection gap, but in a broad term, all I'm saying is ensure you have enough money today which you need for surviving a month without your savings and your dispensables. The third one I would say is when you invest, I have a philosophy called 30-30-30. So typically I invest 30% of my savings in what I call secure investments like fixed deposits, government bonds, treasury bills, insurance. That's where I put it. 30% of my investments typically go to property, and 30% of my property and the like. You can decide whether you want to put in a hard property or you want to put on a property, investment. The third one is I put in what I call higher risk investment. So that's equity. I invest as an angel investor. There are many equity crowdfunding platforms, mutual funds. So I tend to do in higher risk investments. But this varies with age. When you're younger, you tend to be more aggressive. When you're older, you tend to be less aggressive. Family events make a big difference. When you're getting married, you tend to become more sensible. At least in my case, I think I did. When you have kids, you become even more sensible. And then when you turn 40, you become less sensible. So jokes apart, you go through your own evolution and our needs also vary. The last thing I would say, which I see missing in a lot of young people, and when I look back, I wish I did it, is you need to have liquidity at all point in time. When I say liquidity, you need to have at least 6 months of your salary worth of liquidity available. I'm saying when you reach a certain level of comfort. Obviously, in your initial phases, you'll focus on covering your health, you'll focus on covering your protection. Then as you feel you have covered health and protection, then you start investing. As you invest, you feel you are having a bit more money, then you start saving for liquidity. Because the liquidity then helps you for unforeseen circumstances when you need that cash in your hand. So I typically have a philosophy of having at least 6 months of my salary in liquid cash.
Right. I think so. You mentioned about like the basic protection that they should at least get, right? Um, I think we have a audience here asking about like whether from Isa. So she asked like if my company has provided insurance coverage already, is it a good idea to get personal insurance as well?
Great question. It depends on how much your company has covered you. That's why I said you need to assess what is the coverage you have. Sometimes companies only cover like 20,000, for example. You need to ask yourself, is 20,000 enough or do you want to top up? There are products available in the market that are very cheap, which is called a top-up insurance, which is an insurance that only kicks in after you use your company's coverage. Those products are very cheap because they are low risk for the insurers because they are on top of an insurance product. But again, I would say assess what is your coverage, assess what is your exposure, and then make a educated feel on whether you are covered enough or not. Some companies may cover you well enough, and you are right to say that you don't need the coverage. But remember, tomorrow, if you don't have a job, or you retire, or you resign, or whatever reasons, um, especially as you get older, your premiums go through the rocket sky. You will not be covered for many things as you get older. You'll have a lot of exclusion. Your premiums are definitely much cheaper. So it always helps to buy insurance at a young age. You can save significantly, and your premiums are significantly low.
All right. Thanks, Isa, for that question. I think like maybe a lot of millennials, when we think about like insurance, would see it as like a burden. In fact, I see like recently, the Liam, the association, also they just launched like a campaign called like Bukan Extra, basically to I think change the mindset of like seeing this not as like an extra burden, but it's like at the very least a basic protection. So can you maybe like advise further, like to young people like us, like how we should see this not as an extra burden?
See, it is an extra burden if you buy expensive products. Someone who's earning, for example,
Oh,
3,000 ringgit
mm-hmm.
cannot afford to buy an insurance which is 300, 400 ringgit a month. The minute
Right.
that happens and you're forced to buy it, after a few months, you stop buying, you stop paying for it. That is why, for example, our philosophy in AXA has been all our products should be priced at a mobile postpaid recharge or a prepaid recharge because the telco language is something consumers are very, very familiar with. So, for example, we have a health insurance product which is not more than 50 ringgit a month, mostly, in some exceptions, of course. Suddenly, 50 ringgit a month doesn't pinch you. It's two grab drives for you. So it's different. We have a life protection product which is maximum 10 to 20 ringgit if you buy the basic coverage per month. So again, it's cheaper. And then as they get rich, older, richer, then they can obviously look at more complex financial products. But at the simple first millennial level, I would say your three most important or four most important products for you to think of is buy a travel insurance, obviously, do not travel exposed. Motor insurance, you absolutely need to cover the vehicle you are driving. Most of us do, unless you belong to the new generation which doesn't want to own a motor car. The third one is health, and the fourth one is your life protection.
All right. Um, I think like so like one topic, right? It's that we undeniably we're already in the midst of pandemic. So we right now speaking on millennials. So David has this question. He actually asked that my workforce is mainly millennials. So do we need to provide extra coverage for COVID related matters for employees?
It's a great question, David. Check with your insurer. For example, on the life side, we have made a statement on behalf of the association that our products do cover COVID as an industry. So if you are giving coverage to employees, it will cover COVID. But I would always say check with your provider because things may change from time to time. Life coverage will definitely cover COVID. Health,
Mm-hmm.
you will need to check because things change. There are some specific offers being launched for COVID. You could look at those. But for me, those bite-sized insurance products are more for people who don't have the basic health coverage. So if you do have a basic health coverage, it should cover COVID.
Okay. So, how about like some SMEs that, because it's already financially tight, right? Then they won't be able to provide, medical protection to their employees as good as the big corporations. So, do you have any other solutions where they can at least, protect their employees while being better while managing their finance?
So that's why I would say don't, at that. See, there are two things, right? One is how much coverage you should have, which is how insurers typically speak.
Yeah.
The second one is how much you can afford. How much coverage you need may not be able to be bought by everyone because they can't afford it. But how much can you afford is a different conversation. And that's why we do have digital products where consumer can come online and buy directly from us at 40 ringgit, 50 ringgit a month. So the idea of creating such products is to at least give consumers a basic level of coverage. So companies who can't afford, I would encourage you to relook at your products. Are you buying traditional products at traditional prices? Are there other ways in which you can buy cheaper solutions in the market? And as you require more complex solutions, obviously you can go to the traditional models of distribution.
Okay. We still have 15 minutes left. Then maybe
Sure.
we touch on the last topic more on like digitalization and also digital solution. And yeah, so we have a question earlier by Sean. He actually asked like, where would you say the focus will be for companies who is only now realizing that solutions is playing a big part in survival? Where to start?
I would say this is probably, I would probably give a very generic answer because it's a generic question because each company will have their own problems. I
Right.
would say go back to the basics. The first one is what is your vision? What's your compass? Where are you going to be X years from now? Where do you see yourself? That will help define your strategy for your company. That will help define what are the actions you want to prioritize for the company. And when you know where you want to prioritize, that will also define where do you want to put your resources. That priority of solutions is a function of where you are as an organization. I can tell you most companies during the pandemic prioritize actions around how to converse with the customer digitally. So we had more people having digital front ends, buying solutions being launched, updating their contact center telephony so that they can contact the customer. But I think there is a second wave which has started a few years back, which is automating more of the back end to remove, um, you know, what I call manual processes and cost out of the company. So that's clearly another area that many companies would focus on. Depending on which space you are and where you are strong and where your weakness is, you would probably decide to pivot accordingly.
Right. I think it's the same, like even for our product or HR, right? So it's an HR solution app. We've seen like companies, onboarded because they want to get rid of like having so many manual work that the HR has to go through, but want to focus more on like employee engagement. So when they look at the modules, right, they see, oh, there are highlights, there are news where you can at least highlight certain things, announcement to the employees instead of just like the normal uh, the the day-to-day HR work. So we can also see like the shift here, like people are not just looking at the very traditional way of like running stuff, right? So yeah, then in that case, right, like when it comes to this digital transformation that the companies have to adopt, um, what what are your views on that, like especially for small companies, that they can actually scale up and really adopt it, fast enough?
So I think for digital, many times I hear these solutions as my CEO decided to set up an innovation center.
Yes.
We have now a chief digital officer, chief transformation officer, chief innovation officer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm not a fan of any of those
Why
because
so?
I've been a chief transformation officer previously, and I can tell you
Yeah.
it's the most it's the most ridiculous role one can have, because essentially the CEO is
Mm-hmm.
saying, I don't know how to transform, you go and figure out how to transform, and you speak to the different people and you become. It's like telling me that I should have a chief electricity officer in my office. The same way, how can there be a chief digital officer? Digital has to permeate right through the organization. There has to be digital in HR, there has to be digital in IT, there has to be digital in finance, digital in operations, digital in every stem of the company. And for every leader has to think of business as usual and transformation. It's very important as today's leaders to think of both. So to your question on digitalization, I think the first thing is the CEO has to own up to the digital transformation, no one else. It's
Mm.
his agenda, his or her agenda. And
Right.
the tone from the top has to be there. The second one is we have to have a culture of failing, testing, and learning. I have failed more times in the last 5 years than I've ever failed before. And I've all people talk about the success, but I've had so many failures behind the success. So it's very, very important for digital transformation to be able to embrace the new world. You will fail more times than you succeed. And the third one is your KPIs need to be digital specific. For example, many times I see in insurance, you put KPIs like my sales increase, my profit increase. No, these are financial KPIs. Those are KPIs that will improve somewhere in the future, not today. The KPIs, for example, in AXA, we had for my chief operating officer, the KPI I gave is zero paper by the end of this year. She achieved it in July already. So we don't have any paper in any customer interaction now. A
Mm.
KPI I gave my e-commerce team was you cannot take more than 5 minutes to buy an insurance product on our website. So we used to switch on the timer and check if it takes more than 5 minutes. So you need to be have very simple KPIs that people can understand and people can contribute. The last one is you need to have the right people for this strategy to work. You can't just say, I have people and now they are going to. You cannot. You need experts to come in. And for insurance industry, I'm a big believer that we need more people outside of the industry at this point in time, because what is the starting point for insurance? Insurance is a boring industry, according to
Mhm.
millennials. It's one of the least preferred industry for most people who work in. The reason is history has made it boring. But today, insurance is one of the most rapidly transforming industry, more faster, rapidly transforming than any other industry I can think of, because we've been a laggard for too many years. So we
Mm.
have to invest to survive, otherwise we will die. Today, if you look at our company, we have everything from digital to front-end systems to customer portals to cloud to robotics process automation to chatbot. We have it all. So it's a completely new world, and we need to embrace, get them on, build the right culture, and that's the way to get the strategy right.
Yeah,
There's no
it's
silver bullet. There's no silver bullet.
right. I think it's interesting to see how, AXA actually digitize a significant part of your like daily process. And I think it's very realistic to put, such KPIs. Because like I think I've encountered companies where that or they want instant results. Once I adopt this digital solution, I want it to, start generating revenue, right? So like what do you think about like this mindset? Like it seems that like what you said just now, like some owner they are not owning up, but they're just like, okay, I think we need to change, but they don't really have an idea of like what specific areas they want to change, right? So can you advise like give advice, to those owners on like how they should plan and communicate maybe even with their teams to actually get things rolling?
So that's why I said I believe in the concept of lead KPIs over lag KPIs. Financial KPIs are lag KPI. It takes time for financials to flow through to the bottom line, top line, etc. So if we have lead KPIs, then we can give the board, as well as the
Mm-hmm.
management, as well as the owners and the senior leadership teams, a certain level of comfort that we are going down the right path. For example, our customer satisfaction scores are improving. Customers are buying more from us. Customers are staying longer with us. These are good trends to show we are going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon is always a prime example for me. For the first 10 years, they never reported profits, not because they couldn't, because they didn't want to, because they were investing in the business, because their conversation was different. Their conversation was, I'm acquiring more customers, customers are staying longer with my company, customers are buying more from me, my brand
Mm-hmm.
equity and my CX scores are going up.
Right.
So I'm building the right platform and a ecosystem wherein the customer will I will be able to make more money out of the customer.
Mm.
So I think that's where, to your point, if owners don't understand that concept, they
Right.
will not be able to do digital. As simple as that. So digital 101 is, it's sometimes bizarre because I was giving this example in many of our insurance companies. Our
Mm.
traditional models of distribution, like agency, takes anywhere between 13 to 15 years to break even. 13 to 15 years to break even, because insurance is a very long tail industry in
Mm-hmm.
life insurance. And in digital, um, you are within 3 months asking for results. When your traditional industry took 13 and 15 years to break even. So it's it's the mindset that has to change.
Yeah, I think like because digitalization has been such a buzzword, like this year, and everyone just want to join the bandwagon without really knowing what they want, right? Um,
Agree.
right. Let's see. We still have 5 minutes. If we still have any more questions, please do drop them. Maybe you can answer like one more question.
So let me ask you a question. How do you plan your finances? What do you do?
Oh, I think like most importantly is to review review like my expenses. Because like what I do is that I really record down like what I spend, and from there I know like what kind of budget that I will need like each month.
Good.
So then I will also budget for my investment as well. So then, but for the investment, it's more of like what you mentioned about like different levels. When I'm comfortable with this, then I'll move on to the more risk-taking level. So yeah.
Good. Good. Good to hear.
Thanks. Do we still have questions? Okay. All right. Maybe I guess like since we don't have any more questions coming in, um, okay, maybe just one last question. Rohit, anything you can share to inspire and encourage, many entrepreneurs out there to find opportunities despite the challenges faced due to. Oh, wait, we have one last question. Can we take that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so Justin asked, what are the new business risks that insurance companies previously did not cover, but now have started providing or are considering providing?
Well, I can tell you, insurance companies ourselves have a lot of risks which we are exposed to. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've seen the articles. Some of the reinsurers won't be covering pandemic. Reinsurers are insurers who cover insurers because we also need backups.
Mm,
So there are exposures that we have as well. But to your question, the new risks, I think, which has been there for some time, but cybersecurity is one that is high on the agenda. A lot of people are looking at cyber insurance coverage. I would urge a lot of the organizations to look at it as well. The other one we are seeing more of is people are now more keen on buying bite-sized insurance products versus
mhm.
comprehensive, huge coverages.
Yeah.
So the reason is it's cheaper, it's easier to be delivered to telcos like DGE or to e-wallet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There are new risks that are emerging. The other new risk that's obviously emerging is climate risk. and how are you covered for climate risk, be it flood, be it earthquakes, storms, etc. Many of your motor policies you can add flood as an add-on, and I can tell you very few people add it. And in Malaysia, for example, flood is very common, so you should think of it. So the same way, I think always speak to your advisor or go to the websites and really do your research before buying your products, because many of these risks are actually covered, but people never bought it. Unfortunately, insurance is an industry which thrives on unforeseen circumstances. When there were floods in Thailand in 2011, the industry boomed because suddenly many people realized their house insurance they didn't have house insurance and they were not covered for flood. Same thing with the pandemic now. I'm expecting next year to be an exceptionally good year for insurers because more and more people would buy health insurance. So I'm just, it's the way the industry works. Unfortunately, people's awareness happens when an unforeseen circumstance comes through. So clearly, there will be more people covering the risk. Just to finish off on your question on what advice would I give to SMEs, so I can quickly just spend 30 seconds on that. What advice would I spend to SME? Listen to your customer. I think you speak to any angel or any private equity or anybody, because I'm a small angel in my own regard. I invest, and one of the things I always say is look at the customer problem. Is that a real problem? How scalable is that problem? And how can I be different to others in the market? And is there a certain level of either entry barrier or differentiation that I can create, which gives you a headroom over the others? Some of the aspects to look at for SMEs when they look at new problems and new solutions.
All right, thank you so much, Rohit. And I hope like to our dear audience, hope all the questions have been answered. And we thank you so much, Rohit, that you're able to share so much with our audience today. So yeah, we were gonna end our webinar today, and that's all for it. And if you still have any burning questions that we were unable to address during this webinar, please feel free to email us at hello@allhr.my. And before you leave, just another reminder to fill out your information in the QR code or link provided in the description box below. Okay?
Thank you, Nat.
Yeah, thanks, Rohit. Thank you so much.
Bye.
So if you're interested in our solutions mentioned in the webinar, primarily, Alt HR and Omni Hotline, which are both eligible for the SME Digitalization Grant, you can easily sign up and register your interest, on our website. And do stay tuned to our webinar page for more info. We will also send you invite, for next webinars that's upcoming. And for those companies who are still thinking about whether to adopt a digital solution, do know that right now, there's a SME Digitalization Grant. And right now with the Penjana Grant, right, you can actually fast track your approval application with us. So do check it out. I'm sure we will share the links in the chat below. So yeah, thank you very much again for staying with us until the end. And we hope you enjoyed this webinar as much as we enjoyed planning for it. So till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and see all of you soon.